Cool. Yeah, excited to have everyone join. You know, probably going to have a few more jumping in shortly as well. But yeah, as we get started here, just going to open up the chat area. Feel free to introduce yourselves, and also share any LinkedIn, jump into our community page over here. This is part of the Prepare for VC community, and excited to partner with Connor and MindMaven here for the presentation today. So yeah, again, feel free to share what you're working on in your startup. Ask any questions there along the way. And yeah, I'll be monitoring that while Connor presents. And excited to have all of you here. So yeah, I think this is a great topic. I know I'm really excited about it. Heard good feedback from everybody, as we were sending it out as well. And a lot of times, you're focused on. Oh, I didn't send that link correctly. You either focus like 100% on growing your company or 100% on the education side and growing yourself, and it's finding that balance. And really excited to hear what Connor has to say and learn from the presentation today. I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, and we can hit the ground running. Thank you everyone for joining us. We always have a couple people who trickle in. So what I'm going to do is get started with some general house cleaning things here. I won't take up too much time on that, and hopefully by the time that's wrapped, we have one or two more people in here and we can hit the ground running. So first things first. Hi, I'm Connor. The most common questions we get, I'm just going to circumvent them right now, is one, is there going to be a recording of this session? Yes. So don't feel like you have to vigorously take notes. If you miss something, this Jason was just telling me this is going to be up on YouTube. You'll be able to watch it to your heart's content. The slide deck, we are also happy to share in PDF form after this. So again, some of these slides are a little bit text heavy. If you feel like you don't get everything, that will be coming out to you. We're happy to get you what you need to feel like this was a good use of your time. Speaking of which, making this a good use of everyone's time, I've got a lot of content that I'm going to get through, and I have a tendency to get excited and talk fast. So if you have questions, if you're like, you know what, that's interesting, but I don't get how that works in this situation, please feel free to interrupt me. Either drop something in the chat box like Jason was talking about, or I'd encourage everyone, if they're comfortable with it, to turn their video and audio on for the entirety of the presentation. If you're in a place where you can do that. As a speaker, it's frankly a whole lot more fun to talk to faces rather than black boxes or static pictures. I get that's not always possible, and that's all right if that's not the case. But if you are willing to have your video on, it makes for, I think, a more engaging interaction. But either way, feel free to interrupt me at any point in time, and I'm happy to spend some time answering questions. Joseph, I appreciate you turning video on there. Thank you for playing along. Even if I have one person whose face I can see, I swear that goes a long way. I can see what's hitting, what's kind of missing the mark, and what I need to spend more time on. So this is good. All right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen, and if I could have someone, either Joseph as our honorary, community representative, as the one with the video on, give me a thumbs up. Let me know when you see that slide on your screen. And we can hit the ground running here.
Looks good.
We got it, Jason. All right. Is there, if anyone's not able to see, I'm going to give this like 4 seconds. Just type no in the chat box. But I'm not seeing anyone freaking out, so I'm going to say we can see the video here, and I'm going to go ahead and get started because I've got a lot of content to cover today. So to kick things off, just to make sure that we're all in the right place and make sure that you're getting the value that you want out of this, I want to walk you through a couple scenarios that a lot of the founders that we work with run into. And as long as one of these resonates with you, you're in the right place. That's kind of our core message here. So first things first, I'm curious if you've ever found yourself with an extra 30 minutes, maybe a meeting cancels last minute, or you just have one of those rare blocks in your calendar. And rather than using it to focus on something that's actually going to make a difference for the company, that's going to drive success for the company, you find yourself in your inbox, catching up on email, trying fruitlessly, probably, to get to inbox 0. Does that resonate? That's kind of the low-hanging fruit here. I think everyone has that inbox pain a little bit. Joseph, I appreciate the laugh there. I think it's a good sign. It's a good sign. Okay. How about this one? This whole idea of missing the train, or starting Monday with these really exciting priorities and objectives for the week. These things you've been putting off for months and months and months, and this is going to be the week you finally get to it. And then, as often happens, there's some sort of a fire on Monday, or just life gets in the way, and suddenly, before you know it, it's the end of the day on Friday, and you look back on the week, and it feels like you got a lot of things done, but you didn't actually make progress, especially on the priorities that you set out to. So you decide again, well, there's always next week for, the millionth time this year. All right, moving on, just for the sake of expediency, one of my favorites, the field of shoulds, the endless list of things you should be doing if only you had more time for it. And we're big fans, as we're going to talk about here, in relationships. One of the big shoulds in a lot of people's lives is taking care of people, whether it's your team, whether it's your network as a whole. We know we should be investing more into relationships, but the word should doesn't always mean it's going to happen. And it feels like that field, if you will, field of shoulds is getting more and more and more overgrown every single day. All right. And one, just for the sake of time, I'm going to say one last one here. I'm curious, in the last 60 days, if you found yourself dropping everything to, we like to say, play the hero for your company, bail your team out, show up and get that founder CEO high of swooping in and saving the day and fixing everything before it all burns down, before it all falls apart. Maybe it's happened once in the last 60 days, but for a lot of people we work with, this kind of hero complex and the desire to help. I don't want to frame it as a negative thing, but this desire to help can sometimes mean you spend more time putting out fires than you do actually building the business. Hopefully some of these resonate with you guys. We're going to be touching on a lot of these in our conversation here today. So I do want to know what resonates with you guys. So I hope that some of you can help me test out a new piece of technology we're trying out here, where we can get some of your feedback on what it is you want to hear a little bit more about. We're using a tool called Slido. If you go to slido.com, at the very top of that page, you can do this on your phone if you're on your computer, or a separate browser window if you're able to. It's going to have a search bar with a hashtag. If you just put in MindMaven, that should take you directly to a poll asking which of these pain points resonate. And I'm just curious if, I'd be curious to know what they are. If you guys, it's a new piece of tech here. Joseph, you've got a finger up. You have a question, or are you just opening this up?
Yeah, I'm just opening it up, so just give me a minute.
Yeah, no problem. I'm gonna leave this open here just for, really, I'll leave it open for a lot of the presentation. Again, it's slido.com, and then you're gonna search MindMaven at the very top. It'll bring you directly to the poll. You can pick as many of those pain points as you want, and that'll help me just know, hey, what should I spend a little bit more time on today's talk? There's gonna be, every group is a little bit different on what pains feel most poignant, if you will. We've got a couple results coming in right now. So I wish I had more proactive time, more thinking time. Building culture seems challenging. Work-life balance, I always enjoy seeing that one, people picking that. But the big winner here, at least right now, and I'm going to leave this open for a little while, but is this whole idea of being more proactive, having more thinking time. I'm going to give you a couple tools around that today, and then we'll send out a follow-up email that has some resources that dive deeper into this topic than I'll be able to today as well. We're going to, as we'll talk about, really focus on the relationship aspect part of this, which is part of that proactive work, part of, hey, things you've been putting off that you want to proactively do, and relationships are a big part of that. Speaking of which, before we get into the nitty-gritty, the pragmatics of all of this, let me give you a quick introduction to who we are, what we do, all of that good stuff. So MindMaven, we're an executive coaching firm. Our bread and butter is really the world of startups, founders, CEOs, VCs, C-suite execs. That's the core group of people that we're passionate about helping. And we like to say that we help these people achieve true greatness through relationships. And this idea of true greatness is very, I think subjective is a good word for it, or it's something that in some form or another almost everyone wants, but what that means to them is going to be very personal. For some people, it's literally about changing the world. They have that big vision of, I want to build a company that's going to change the way the world works, the way people interact, connect, communicate, whatever. For some people, it's, I want to be the best version of myself, whatever that looks like. I don't need to change the world. I just want to be the best version of myself. For some people, it's leaving a legacy, taking care of family, whatever it is for you. we're big believers that the best path, really the only path to achieving that and keeping that is through relationships. And a big question we'll often get here, because it's a little bit counterintuitive, is why? Why relationships? And the answer is very, very simple. I feel confident. There's very few blanket statements I will make, but this is one of the ones I do feel comfortable making. That you don't know anyone who has reached the top or achieved true greatness and kept true greatness for any lasting amount of time without some form of help from others. We've all had help along the way. Anyone who claims to have gotten where they are on their own is either trying to sell you something or is just delusional. We can't get where we need to go without support from others. And Jason, I appreciate you nodding along a little bit, because this is just one of those. Let me put it this way. I have said this statement or a statement like this more times than I can count over my career with Mind Maven. And I have yet to have someone disagree with me on this. It's like it's one of these things that we intrinsically know as human beings. We know relationships are important. And yet, despite the fact that we know this, we continually neglect them. Or at the very least, we don't give them the time and attention that we know they deserve. And the reason for that is very simple. And it's probably a concept you all are painfully, intimately familiar with. And it's that whole Eisenhower matrix idea, urgency versus importance. As a founder, a CEO, a leader, a VC, you're in a very urgency-driven, very reactivity-driven world. And the problem is relationships are one of those things that are always important, but very rarely urgent. Or at the very least, by the time a relationship is urgent, if you have not proactively been investing into it, it's too late. If you suddenly find yourself needing an introduction to someone right now, but you haven't built up the relationship that you need to bridge that gap, you can't go to this stranger you haven't talked with in 4 years and say, hey, can you do this big ask for me? By the time it's urgent, there's not much you can do about it. So what do we do about that? We can't really change the fact that we're in an urgency-driven environment, but there are a couple solutions we can do to balance this whole urgency versus importance thing. And they're pretty straightforward. Now, the first things first is just take the time that you do have and use it more intentionally. Use it smarter, basically. Whether it's you're back to back and you only have an hour or two a day to devote to things that aren't in meetings, we'll use that hour or two in the most impactful way. That's simple answer number one. And simple answer number two is freeing up time. So we can use the time smarter, or we can find ways to free up ideally massive amounts of time. And that's a big piece of what we do. I'm going to touch on it briefly today. I'm not going to do a deep dive, but the general idea is if you can work with an EA or a chief of staff type role in fairly counterintuitive ways, or at least unique ways, we've proven time and time again, you can get back 8 to 10 hours of your week every single week. And if you can use even just a couple of those hours each week to invest into relationships or to invest into thinking time, growth time, personal development time, the ROI of that time spent is going to be huge. So again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on what we would call intent or using time smarter today, just for the sake of time. But in a follow-up email or some resources that we can share with you, or we'll have Jason share with you, we have some content that I think you guys will find really valuable around that. And then I'm going to do a little bit of a teaser on this idea of freeing up time, just because I think it's something I'd like you guys to be thinking about, because it's probably not too far in the future for many of you, or frankly, the time maybe now to start actively thinking about this role. And when we talk about freeing up time, we call that leverage. And the single greatest source of leverage you're going to find, as I've hinted at already, is this EA assistant type role. I don't know how many of you are actively working with an assistant right now or have worked with one in the past, but when I talk about an EA, a lot of people have a very clear picture in their head of what that role looks like and how they support you. We see that view as very, very limited. And so we recommend turning them into what we call an engagement manager. It's a different term, and it's very intentionally a different term, because we want to change the way that you think about working with someone like this. So the easiest way, the simplest way to think about an engagement manager is kind of like a cross between a high-powered EA and an intuitive chief of staff. And the responsibilities are very, very, very simple. They're there to help you free up time wherever possible. So that's some of the basic things like, calendar management, what you'd expect a typical EA to do. But they're also there to help you protect time, to carve out time for the things that are going to move the needle. One thing that I probably don't have time to talk about, but I'm going to hint at it anyway, is white space time, making sure that you have at least 4 consecutive hours every single week on your calendar for proactive work, for the things that if you do not make the time for, you're not going to find the time for. And having someone who finds that time for you and protects that time for you, and frankly, from you, goes a really, really, really long way. EAs are great yes men, great executors. You give them a task, they get it done, no questions asked, and you get results, and that's good. But what makes an EM a little bit different is they're not afraid to tell you no, because they know what's important to you. They know what your priorities are. And when you say, hey, can you schedule a meeting with Connor on Wednesday at 2 p.m.? Well, that's in the middle of your white space time that week. They're not going to just schedule that meeting. They're going to push back and say, hey, I can, but as a reminder, that's your white space time. Here's what you're using that time for. You said you wanted to use that time to invest into some of your investor network. Are you sure you want me to schedule over that time for a meeting with Connor? And typically that little bit of pushback is often all it takes for you to realize, well, no, I saw that I needed a meeting. It kind of looked empty there. So I just requested, but it's not more important than what was already on your calendar. So your EA is there to tell you no, to protect your time from yourself and to keep you focused on the things that are going to move the needle most. And finally, they're there to help you really invest into your relationships. And I'll give you a couple examples of what that can look like here, because this is maybe what's the biggest difference between an EA and a EM or engagement manager. They're there to help you deliver great experiences to the people who matter most, because the people who matter most are going to have the biggest impact on your success. So probably don't have time to do all of these, but let me give you an example of follow-up emails, for example. Joseph or Jason, you can just nod along with this. I won't put you on the spot too much, but would you agree if you spend, say, 30 minutes meeting with someone, that it's typically a good idea to send a follow-up email? Okay, we've got a thumbs up and we've got some nodding. I appreciate that, gentlemen. And most people agree with that, and then follow up that agreement with, well, yes, it's a good idea, but I don't do it. Or yes, it's a good idea, but I only do it 20% of the time. And usually the reason for that is because it takes time to write an actual meaningful follow-up email. Anyone can send a, hey, Connor, great to meet you today. Thanks for the time. Looking forward to talking further. Cheers, Jason. That adds noise to someone's inbox, not value. A meaningful follow-up email, it takes probably 10 minutes of your time. And if you have a day of back-to-back meetings, that adds up very quickly. And 6 meetings, 6 follow-ups, that's an hour of your day right there just in follow-up email. So of course, we're not going to do that. So let me walk you through this whole idea of an engagement manager and how they would help with this process. What we would do is put an app on your phone, a dictation app. And the moment you walk out of a meeting that you want to do a follow-up, where you're going to pull out this phone, open up the app, and talk through a rough outline of a follow-up email. Something like, hey, Joseph, it was great to meet you today. I really appreciate you carving out time for a call. I really appreciated your insights on XYZ specifically. I think that was a really unique way of looking at it. As promised, I wanted to capture some of the action items we discussed. I promised I would do this. You promised you'd do that. You're capturing all the important things. And it's taking you 45, maybe 60 seconds to dictate this email. This dictation will be sent automatically to your EM, who's going to take it and turn it into an email draft on your behalf that first reads well. So they're not transcribing what you say, because we don't tend to write the same way that we talk. I learned that lesson painfully when I look at a transcription of any time I do a speech. It sounds fine, but it reads awkwardly. So we do not read, or we do not write and speak the same way. So they're going to take what you spoke, turn it into a draft that reads well, and reads like it's coming from you. So it's going to be in your voice, in your style. And they're going to put that in your drafts folder and mark it ready for you. They're going to give it a ready label or a ready category, depending on what email system you use. And the idea is if you have that day of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 back-to-back meetings, by the time you finally get to your email at the end of the day, you have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pre-written email drafts ready for you to review. Give them a quick skim, see if there's any minor edits that are necessary, which maybe in the beginning there will be as they're still learning your voice and your style. But for the most part, you review, press send, review, press send. And what took 10 minutes per email before, you can usually get down to 5 to 7 minutes to get every single email out total, which is frankly an order of magnitude efficiency improvement. And that's an hour of your day back just in follow-up emails that if you were sending, well, now you have that time back. If you weren't sending, well, now you have essentially an hour of your time that wasn't actually spent, but that's an awkward way of putting it. You were able to invest in your relationships in a meaningful way that you wouldn't have otherwise. Does that make sense? We've got some nodding going on. All right, good. Good. And that's just one example. There's a million ways an EM can support you, from tracking commitments to make sure that things that you promised others actually happen, or things that others promised you actually happen, to more proactive things like shadowing your inbox, where they're in there they're seeing emails come in, and because they know how you write, because they know who your relationships are, they're proactively drafting responses that they're not sending it, of course, but they see this email, they think they know how you'd respond, so they draft the response. Again, all you do is go in there, review it. If they get it right, press send. If they miss the mark, you either edit it or give them feedback and have them update it. And there's a million ways you can work with someone like this. And the idea is, if you leverage these skills, if you work with someone like this in the right way, you can easily get back 10 hours of your time every single week. You can really use to invest into those things that are really going to move the needle most for you. Now, that said, I don't know how many of you are currently working with an EA. I wouldn't be surprised if none of you are right now. It might be a little bit early stage. And I say this not because this exact moment in time is necessarily the moment for you to hire this person, but it is the time to start thinking about this role. Really, what I want to do is expose you to this idea, so when the time is right, you're aware of it, that, hey, I need leverage related to the office of the CEO, the office of the founder, the things that most people don't typically think about getting leverage around, like emails, relationship management. The time to be aware of that is now, and the time to act on that, frankly, is sooner than a lot of people think. There's no golden metric, like you hit 20 people, it's time to hire an EM. It's not that simple per se, but typically what we see is most people do hire. If you hit 30 people and you don't have an EM, probably time to start thinking about it then. But anywhere between 20 and 30 employees is probably a good time to start thinking about that. I did have one client who, and this is not necessarily a recommendation, but just so you're aware, his third hire in his company ended up being an EM. He was in marketing, so communication and relationship management was a very big part of his role. So convincing your board or your investors that your third hire should be an engagement manager is probably not going to go well, but just be aware that this person can bring you value at any point in time. But as you start scaling, they can quickly become one of the most valuable investments you can make. And I know I'm going fast. I'm going through a lot of this very quickly. So what I'm going to do just briefly before we get into some of the relationship management work is take a pause here, see if there's any questions. I know we had some questions drop into the chat box here, so I want to briefly look at what those were. Joseph, you were asking, is EA same or close to a VA? And Maria, because she is always on it, already got you an answer, it looks like there. That's great. But yes, they're very similar. It's a VA is just a type of an EA, really. And typically when we talk about an EM, they can be in person, like someone who's actually at your office with you, but more often than not, they are virtual. Most of our clients end up working with someone virtual, but there's no right or wrong. It's just, what feels right for you. And Joseph, you have your hand up. Do you have another question for me?
Yes, Connor. Thank you so very much.
Yes.
And so this presentation of yours sounds very exciting. I just have a quick question about your EA. To be honest with you, I was not aware of it, but it sounds pretty exciting. Now, my question is, are there EAs out there, or do we have to hire somebody to be an EA? I mean, like I said, I'm not familiar with EA, so I don't know if you put an ad out there, it's like looking for an EA, and then EAs will come to you, or you have to catch a model of an EA and say, now this is your job, type of thing. How does that work?
That's a great question, and the answer is a little bit convoluted. So let me say this. First off, yes, if you were to post a job for an EA or an executive assistant, you would have plenty of applicants. It's a very common job description. What I will say though is people who make great EAs do not always make great EMs or engagement managers. As I mentioned before, one big difference between an EA and an EM is that EAs are often very good at execution. You give them something to do, they do it, they get it done for you, which again, great, valuable. I don't want to demean that because that is huge. But having someone who isn't afraid to tell you no, who knows your priorities and can help you align those and kind of push back a little bit, that doesn't always come naturally to people who have been in this EA role for 15, 20 years of their career. They're used to being told what to do and doing it and moving on to the next thing. So there are things to look for. And what we'll do in the follow-up email that I send out after this, or that we have Jason send out, however we end up working that out, I'm going to send over a couple things. One, well, Well, what I'll do is I'll send out a collection of profiles of engagement managers. And what these are actual people we've had apply who ended up making great engagement managers and kind of what their background was, what they did in the past. So one interesting thing is when people are recruiting for this role, or when we're helping people recruit for this role, we often don't tell them to look for someone don't find someone who is an EA with a ton of experience. For some of the reasons I just walked you through, there's often a lot of bad habits you have to break. And frankly, again, people who have been doing it a long time are good at what they do, but what we're looking for is different. So finding someone with a slightly different background, like a degree in experience in project management or marketing communications, or one kind of the ideal that we've seen it a couple times now, is EMs who come from a nonprofit background often are amazing at what they do, because a key thing to look for in a good EM is someone who genuinely cares about helping and taking care of others. And it's usually a pretty safe bet. If someone comes from a nonprofit background, if they worked at a nonprofit, they care about people. They care about taking care of others, delivering great experiences. So there's a lot of different things to look for in an engagement manager hire. And again, I'll send that profile out. And if this is something that feels like, you know what, I'm feeling the pain of not having enough time, and I'm feeling pulled in too many directions, and this is something that you're like, you know what, this probably is a hire that I want to make in the next 3 to 6 months. What I would encourage you to do, we can reach out to, we have a hiring manager who helps place these EMs. And even if it's not a matter of working with us, it's, if you just want to talk more about this role and what it looks like and how to find it, she would love to have that call with you. And there's obviously no pressure on the call. We don't do the whole high pressure sales thing, but it's what we're excited about. It's what we do. So if it's something that you want to find, she can at least point you in the right direction. Just if anyone is interested in that conversation, do me a favor and just drop a yes in the chat, just so we have a log, so we can say, okay, these 3 people said that they might be interested in at least having this conversation. We can make sure that we connect you with her. All right, Dave, I appreciate you joining us. Totally get that you got to hop. Joseph, we'll get you connected. I appreciate that. Jason, did you have something that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, so, does the EA or EM have the same schedule as everyone on the team, or are they part-time into full-time roles? Like, how do you typically manage that?
Great question. So the role of an EM is very, very quickly a full-time role. In the beginning, some people do hire part-time, but, and I don't mean to sound like a sales pitch, so bear with me, but if you work with us and we ramp them up in the skills very quickly, it becomes a full-time job in a month, easy, just supporting one person. One potential question that might be in other people's mind, just because I almost always get it at this point in the presentation, is, hey, can I hire an EM and have them support me and the executive team, me and 4 other people? You can, but I highly encourage you not to do that for the reason I just said. An EM supporting one person fully is very quickly a full-time job. If that is the justification you need to make to your investors, to your board, to make this hire, make it with the idea that it is temporary. We're hiring this person on to support me and my co-founder, but the idea is in the next 3 to 6 months, as we get them situated, they're going to support me fully. That's where you're going to get the most value out of them. When we get to things like inbox shadowing, which I've hinted at, which is them actively owning your inbox, owning your relationships, drafting responses, initiating interactions with you for other people. That is a full-time job. It's immensely valuable, but it's a full-time job. And if you have them doing that and supporting someone else, one of 2 things is going to happen. They're going to burn out, or they're just going to hit a wall. And it's going to be, you know what? I can't shadow today. I've got to get this important meeting scheduled for so-and-so, and this fire is burning, and the 2 other execs need this from me. And it is more or less setting them up for failure, and as a result, setting yourself up for failure. So if you're like, you know what, I can't justify hiring this for myself, but I could maybe do me and my co-founder, great, but see it as a temporary thing and communicate that to this potential EM you're hiring as well. We're hiring you on to support both of us, but the idea is once we're all comfortable with it, you're going to support just me, and we'll hire someone new, when we're ready for the co-founder, and that they'll support just that person. Joseph, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off of Jason's question. Mm-hmm. And I do apologize if I'm slowing your roll, because I know you have more presentation to go through.
No, this is great.
Jason made a valid point. Let's say that Jason and I are on the same team, and we hired you to be our EA, and saying, "Hey, Connor, this is only going to be, as you point out, a 6-month stint, and to help us get to the next level, and then you're moving us to the next level, and now the time is winding down. Now we get close to the 6-month point of time. How do we determine where Connor goes after the 6 months or so timeline? Because I have a style that's very different from Jason. I mean, I love Jason. Jason's an awesome guy, but his style and my style is definitely different. Now, how can I want Connor to be successful. I always want other people to be successful, and I always try to place him into a position to be successful in. Now, how can I know the Connor style is better with me, or Connor style is better with Jason? Because you point out, if we're going to be between two people, how can I determine which is better? I mean, do we go up to Connor and saying, "Hey, who do you prefer to be with?" And then after the 6 months come along and saying, "Connor, do you mind if you help train Nancy next to help me or Jason to move to the next level?" I mean, how does that work? Thank you.
Yeah, happy to tackle that. So what I would recommend, let's continue that example. So it's going to be you and a co-founder you're hiring for. You want support for you and your co-founder, but you're hiring one EM, and you and your co-founder have very different styles. What I would do is pick one of you that you're hiring for right now. So you know what, we're hiring an EM for Joseph, and in their extra time, they'll support the co-founder as well. But when you're hiring this person, you're calibrating for you, Joseph, and that's what we'd recommend. You should. The person who's going to get the most value from the EM is always going to be the CEO. So hire for typically the CEO, and they can support the other people on the team. You know, ideally only one or maybe two other people. I really wouldn't recommend pushing it past that. Again, one is ideal, but if we can't do one, then 1 to 2 other people, but they only support those 1 to 2 other people in very basic ways. Calendar management, travel booking, just general office admin stuff. The higher leverage things like email dictation, inbox shadowing, that should always only be one person who's getting that level of support. The context switching between two very different styles of people is very difficult, very, very difficult for anyone, even a great EM. So all that to say, to simplify that one more time, hire for one person, you, Joseph, and they can support this other person as well, but you're calibrating you're looking for someone who matches with you in the recruiting process. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. I guess that really makes sense. So that way that the EA would know my attributes and how I process things a little bit more closely. And so after the jump date, now they'd be able to understand the whole flow. So yeah, I get that. Thank you very much, Connor.
Absolutely. All right, just for the sake of time, what I'm going to do is move on again. If you are at the point where you want to at least have this conversation and explore it more, I'll get you connected with our recruiting team. And as Maria just dropped into chat, we get so many questions on this whole EA/EM role. So feel free to send them directly to us, and we can also follow up after this presentation via email, answer any questions you guys may have about it. All right, but for the sake of time and to get into my frankly favorite part of the conversation, I want to dive into what we call fellowship, and that's the relationship management side of our work. We've talked about a little bit saving time, freeing up a little bit of time here and there, using your time more intentionally. What do you do with that time? If we give you hours of your time back, or even just an hour of your time back, how do you spend that? Because it doesn't do us any good to free up an hour from your inbox if all you do is dump that time into managing your calendar. There's no net gain there at all. So there's a bunch of things, of course, that you can do with the time, but if I could make a recommendation, it'd be 2 things. One, invest some of that time at least into whatever self-care or mindfulness looks like for you. Some time reading, more time with family, meditation. No right or wrong here. Self-care means something different to everyone, but invest some of the time you free up into that, because in many ways, the health of a company is a direct result of the health of the founder. So take care of your own mental health. And then number 2, invest a good chunk of that time into the skill of fellowship, which is all about relationships. And when we talk about building fellowship with people, There's two types of fellowship that as a founder, you need to be very closely tuned into. One is team fellowship. In other words, relationships with your team or people that you want to become a part of your team. Because in the early days of any company, a founder is really an individual contributor to the company. They're working on a product just as much as the engineer is. But as a company grows and you become more of a quote unquote traditional CEO, your key responsibility is no longer building the product, it's scaling the company. And the only way to scale the company is to attract and keep smart people. And you only do that by building a team that believes in you as a person and as a leader, not just believes in the company because they're doing cool shit. We need people who believe in you. And if you can build those types of relationships, you're going to have people who stick around. It is about the money, but it's not just about the money, because they want to be a part of your journey. They want to support you because they feel like you support them. So that's team fellowship. And number two is tribe fellowship. And that's your general network. Your tribe is where you generate opportunities from, opportunities that you wouldn't otherwise have access to as a founder because you don't have the capital for it. You don't have the time for it. If you can systematically build relationships with the most influential people in your network, educate them on what you want, and activate those relationships when you need whatever it is you're looking for, you can get access to opportunities you otherwise never would have access to. And what we're going to focus on today, just for the sake of time, as much as I would love to do both, I'm going to focus on tribe because that tends to be a little bit more relevant to earlier stage companies. When you start feeling the pain of team fellowship, it's usually right around the 30 to 50 person mark. When you hire that first person or see the first person on the team and you think, I don't know their name. I did not hire that person. I wasn't involved in the hiring process. And that's for people who care about relationships and care about their team, it's jarring, it's painful, and it's kind of, frankly, it kind of hurts a little bit. You feel like you're losing touch. So there is a lot of great things we can talk about around that. And if that is a pain point that some of you are facing, maybe let Jason know. Maybe we can do some sort of a follow-up shorter presentation on team. But for today, I'm going to focus primarily on tribe and generating opportunities from that, because if you can build this skill as a founder, you're never going to be at a loss for opportunities and ways to grow companies. So what I want to start with on this, how are we doing on time? We're doing good. All right, we can do this. I want to give you first the most basic relationship management skill I have that can apply to tribe, it can apply to team, put it anywhere you want, and it is going to have a positive impact on your life. But before I get to that, I think it's important that we define relationships, because they can be this kind of ambiguous thing when we talk about what really is a relationship. And we at MindMaven define them very simply as being the sum of all past and present interactions you've had with someone. In other words, you can take someone, and if you've never interacted with them, bear with me for the common sense here, but if you've never interacted with someone, you do not have a relationship with them. If you interact with someone all the time, but the relationship or the interactions are very shallow, it's, hey, we meet around the water cooler and I ask and I complain about the weather and the traffic. Again, there's not really, there's more of a relationship there than with the guy you've never interacted with, but there's not much of one. Versus someone that you interact with, but you have deep, meaningful, relevant, valuable interactions, well, then you have a meaningful, relevant, valuable relationship with them. So the general idea here, that the golden rule of any type of relationship management is to ensure that any interaction that you stage or that you deliver is going to be perceived as the other party by meaningful, relevant, or valuable. If you can do that, you're going to build relationships that are not only opportunity generating, which is great and important and a big part of what we're talking about, but are also personally fulfilling, which frankly, I think is more important. And so the skill I want to give you that'll allow you to do this at scale is really common sense, but really powerful. And we like to call it positive alacrity. And the general idea of this principle is delivering micro moments that have a profoundly uplifting impact on others. Our founder, Patrick, always likes to say it's probably the easiest way you have to make other people happy, and in doing so, make yourself happy. So it's very simple, and it's powered by a single habit that you can build into your day-to-day life. And it's this: anytime you think something positive that you genuinely believe, voice it. Now I can practically hear the kind of does from here. It seems like common sense, but the thing about common sense, and forgive a cliche here, but common sense is not always common practice. In urgency-driven environments, when we're booked back to back and there's always a fire to put out, we have to be thinking about 10 years in the future what we want the company to look like. We have these thoughts all the time. That's an interesting way of doing things. Or I really appreciate that so-and-so shared that with the team, or that they helped our new team member get situated. We have probably at least 5 to 6, if not dozens of these thoughts every single day. But because of the nature of the lives that we lead and the work that we're in, we don't voice them. We just think them. It makes us feel good, and we go on with our day. And we never share it with the other person, which is just, frankly, a waste. So let me give you a quick example of what positive alacrity will look like in action here, and something that a lot of you can probably relate to. So let's say, surprise, surprise, you're the founder of a company, and maybe you're working on it, rolling out an important update. So everyone's heads down on this new project, and things are a little bit crazy. And despite that, you've noticed a team member, let's say a founding team member, someone who's been with you a long time, taking some time to work with an intern, get them situated, teach them. I think in the example on the screen there, we're talking about Excel, pivot tables in Excel, which are an absolute nightmare, by the way. But despite that, you've got this founding team member helping someone new on the team get situated, feel welcome, feel at home. And typically you might see that, and as a founder, just smile to yourself and think, I've got such a great team here, and it makes you feel good, and then you go on with your day. Well, the idea with positive alacrity is you don't just think the thought. You think the thought, and then you share it with the other person. Maybe not right in that moment. If they're in the middle of something, don't interrupt them. But when you see that they finish up, you walk up to that person and say something like, hey, I know your workload's crazy right now. I know we're all being pulled in a million different directions, but I couldn't help but notice you working with John and helping him feel at home and get situated in this new environment. I just want to say, as a leader, I can't begin to express how much that means to see my team taking care of each other. So thank you for doing that. It made my day. Simple comment, takes 10 seconds of your time, but I guarantee when this person goes home to their spouse, their partner, their family, their friends, if there's one story they tell about the day, it's not going to be the intern with pivot tables. It's not going to be how hard they were working on this update. It's going to be this 10-second interaction you gave them where they felt seen and validated for just something small that they did. It makes someone's day, and it takes practically no time at all from you. So that's the habit I would encourage you to instill. I have an ebook, again, and the resources we'll be sending out. It's a 10-day positive alacrity challenge that helps you instill this a little bit more and dives deeper into the topic, because there are ways you can make it more valuable and make it more impactful. So we'll dive into that in that ebook, but for the sake of today's conversation, I'm not going to spend any more time on it. All of that makes sense before I move on. All right, looks like we're good. I don't see any burning questions in chat. So for the sake of time, I am going to move on. Talk a little bit more pragmatically about your tribe, generating opportunities from your tribe, because relationships drive success like nothing else. And forgive me if I go fast here, guys. This last part of the presentation is a little bit dense. So I'm not going to pause for questions as much. I want to make sure we get through it. But if you do have questions at the end, we can go through them then, or we can do it afterwards. So to drive this example home of relationships driving success on a more pragmatic level, I want to give you a true story about a social gaming company from a number of years ago. They were kind of the number one, or I think it may be the number 2 player in the space. And when they first started the company, the CEO was decided, you know what, I don't know if I want to sell my company at any point in time, but the day may come that I do. And so with the help of a board member, what they decided to do was start building relationships with potential acquirers on the off chance a day may come when they wanted to sell the company. And so they did that. They just stayed top of mind, stayed in touch with these people, became relevant to them, became valuable to them. And years went by, and the company became, what it became, very successful, very, very large. And out of the blue one day, they got an offer from a company saying, hey, we want to buy your company. We'll give you, $200 million for the company. Someone totally separate from those they're building relationships with. And rather than taking the deal, which frankly was a great deal for them, but what they did is they reached out to everyone they've been building relationships with and said, hey, this offer just came in. I'm entertaining it. I think we might be at a stage where we're ready to sell. Do you have any interest? And what ended up happening is over the course of 7 days, just a single week, the company ended up selling for $400 million, double the valuation of a company just by activating relationships that had been built up over the course of years. And there, at the risk of sounding blunt, you can't do that. Well, it's even on the slide, but you can't do that with strategy and hiring, organizational structure alone. That is all important. You need all of that. But there is no way to double the valuation of a company in 7 days with just strategy. It comes from relationships. And this idea, this accident acquisition is just one of many examples of how relationships can help. They get you access to whatever it is that you need as a founder, whether you need referrals to talent, to clients, investors, acquirers. You can see all the examples popping up here on the screen. Relationships are what get you access to this. And when you hear the buzzword of being resource efficient, we always all want to be resource efficient founders, and VCs praise resource efficient founders all the time. all they're saying is that person is really good at managing their network and generating opportunities they wouldn't otherwise have access to. Because capital, as a founder, limited. Your time is limited. Your network as a whole is virtually unlimited. The amount of opportunities going on at any given point in time is limitless. All we have to do is put a system in place that allows you to tap into those opportunities with a little bit more regularity. And when those do seem to come out of nowhere, those, hey, this person thought of me, they sent me this amazing investor intro, or connected me with a potential acquirer or talent. And when that happens seemingly out of nowhere, we often call that serendipity, or the right person thinking of you at the right time. And the problem that most founders run into is waiting for serendipity to happen. That happens to us, we get really excited because it feels really good, but we think it's luck. I got lucky this time. But the fact of the matter is, as a founder, if there is one job you have in addition to scaling, it is to make serendipity happen. And you can do that, believe it or not, because serendipity is simply really a referral. It's someone thinking of you at the right time, at the right place, and connecting you with an opportunity. And there is a system, there is a process that takes place behind the scenes for every single referral that you ever get, that you have gotten, that you will got. Something is taking place. And there's two factors that drive referrals. Factor number one is timing. And timing is literally the moment in time when someone in your network comes across an opportunity that you want to hear about. And the good news is right now, or at any given point in time, there are more opportunities pinging in your network. If we look at everyone you've ever connected with over the course of your life and career, your network is huge. And there are more opportunities than you would ever know what to do with going on at any given point in time. You're probably hearing about maybe 5% of them right now. And again, timing is just a moment of time when one of the people in your network encounters one of those opportunities. The issue with timing is you really have no control over it. There's nothing you can do really, at least realistically, to put someone in the right place at the right time to hear about something, which makes our second factor here more important. And this is Mindshare. In other words, how top of mind are you with this person? Or to simplify that even further, when the moment in time comes that this person encounters an opportunity, how likely are they to think of you over virtually anyone else in their network? Why should they think of you and send you this amazing investor intro, or you this amazing acquisition intro, or whatever it may be, talent intro? Why you over someone else? And that is largely determined by how top of mind you are. One thing that Patrick, our founder, likes saying is humans will always take the path of least resistance. And so if you are consistently top of mind, if you're consistently interacting with someone and you're the easiest person for them to make an introduction to because there's already an ongoing email exchange or they already have a meeting with you, it's probably going to go to you because we want we route things to the easiest path typically. And what often happens here with Mindshare, and this is where things go wrong, is let's say you have a meeting with someone, you're meeting with someone for the first time and you have lunch. Now, the moment you two are walking out the door from lunch, your Mindshare with them is at 100%. In other words, if on the way to their car, they meet someone who's like exactly what you were looking for, you use that meeting to say, hey, here's what I'm looking for. And they meet this, this perfect candidate for you. Well, they are probably going to think of you. It's almost guaranteed they're going to think of you. Mindshare's at 100%. And they're going to chase you down in the parking lot and say, hey, I need to connect you with someone before you leave. And that's wonderful and magical, and real life never happens that way. More often than not, opportunities take place long after initial interactions. And what goes wrong is when we fail to follow up, when we fail to interact with people, Mindshare dips. And when Mindshare dips, it eventually reaches a certain point where the other person is physically incapable of thinking of you. The brain rewires itself constantly based on what is relevant. And if you have not interacted with someone, you have made yourself irrelevant to them. And they can come across the perfect handcrafted opportunity for you. But if their brain has rewired itself away from you, they can't, it's not a dig at you. They don't have anything against you. They are just physically incapable of thinking of you. So they're going to give it to someone else. Again, path of least resistance. And that is why we very, very often miss opportunities. Or, we meet with this person 3 months later and they say, God, I feel awful. I can't believe I didn't think of you. But, a month ago, I had this amazing opportunity and I sent it elsewhere. I should have sent it to you and I feel awful. And it hurts. It sucks. And we can kind of get, frankly, a little bit frustrated with the other person and think, well, of course, how could you not think of me? That was perfect. It's not their fault. You did not stay top of mind. You did not stay relevant. You did not keep Mindshare at a certain threshold. And so, of course, they didn't think of you. So what we want the system to look like is a little bit more like this. So you have that meeting with someone, and then right after the meeting, you send a follow-up email. And maybe a couple of weeks after that, you make an introduction because you learned about what they're looking for, what their challenges are. So you connect them with someone. And then a little while later, you send a book recommendation, a blog post, a podcast, whatever. You just, over the course of time, you stage these very, very simple interactions. I'm not telling you that you need to meet with people for an hour every single week to stay top of mind. That's not the idea. Frankly, people don't even need to love you. You need to be slightly north of neutral, is what we often say. They have to like you. So deliver simple, basic interactions. On their birthday, send them a personalized birthday message, not the thing where LinkedIn pops up and says, hey, it's their birthday, press send on this message. It says happy birthday. That's noise. But send them something meaningful, relevant. It doesn't even have to be a gift. A gift is great, but again, a personal email, a check-in, comment on things on LinkedIn, on Twitter when they post. Stay top of mind. And the likelihood, there's never a guarantee, of course, but the likelihood of you hearing about the opportunities you want to hear about exponentially increases the more top of mind you are. And the final thing I want to leave you with here, just to make this as pragmatic as possible, is we've talked about opportunities. That's kind of what we're after. We want more referrals to opportunities. And as we discussed, opportunities largely come from Mindshare, how top of mind we are with someone. So what drives Mindshare? Well, you might have kind of already hinted and guessed at this, but Mindshare is just interactions, how you interact with someone. And there's two factors that impact interactions. You've got frequency, in other words, how often you interact with someone, and then experience impact. And that's just how meaningful, relevant, and valuable the other person perceives your interactions to be. The example I like to give is like email spam. If I'm getting dozens of emails from someone a week, or sometimes in many cases a day from a company, a marketing list, those become spam. I get them frequently, which is great, but it has the opposite intended effect because I stop seeing them. They're not meaningful, relevant, or valuable to me, so I unsubscribe from the list. Now, if you were to send me an email that said, hey, click on this link and I'll automatically deposit $100 into your account, you can send me 50 of those a day. I'm going to open every single one because that is meaningful, relevant, and valuable. There is value to me in that email. I get something out of that. I'm not telling you to bribe people and send them a PayPal link saying, hey, I'll give you $100 every time you click this link, but that's the general idea. What we want them to do is see your name and associate that name with value. I want to open that email from Joseph or from Christopher or from Ivy because I know it's not just going to be spam. It's going to be a meaningful message, something that's personal, that shows they care, or it's going to be something valuable. They're going to share a book, a blog post, a podcast about something that I care about. And so, of course, I'm going to open this. And so the habit that I would encourage all of you to start building is this simplest habit out there, beyond positive alacrity, which is maybe a little bit simpler, but if you can get in the habit of sending one email a day to someone you would not otherwise have reached out to that day. So replying to an email does not count, but reach out to someone in your network you wouldn't otherwise have reached out to in a personal way, in a custom way, in a way that you believe will be seen as meaningful, relevant, and valuable. You're going to be tired of those words, but meaningful, relevant, and valuable. It's almost guaranteed that one of those emails will lead to an opportunity that you would not otherwise have access to. And often that one opportunity justifies the 100 plus emails that you sent that didn't lead anywhere. That's, if we do that, once every workday, I'm a coach and a writer, not a mathematician, but it's like roughly 250 emails, give or take, somewhere around there. I guarantee one of those 250 emails, at the very least, if not multiple, will lead you to an introduction to someone or a piece of advice you wouldn't otherwise have gotten, or a client you wouldn't otherwise have gotten. So again, taking it all the way back here, 2 habits I would love for you to walk away from this session are positive alacrity. Think something positive about someone else that you genuinely believe, voice it. It takes 10 seconds of your time. And 1 email per day to someone in your network who would not otherwise have heard from you. Maybe 10 minutes of your time. So about, we'll say 11 minutes total is what I'm asking you to do. Now you get an EM in place who can write these emails on your behalf from dictation. That obviously speeds up even more. But even so, let's take the EM out of the equation. I guarantee this will be some of the most valuable 11 minutes that you spend every single day. So carve out the time for it. It will have an ROI. And that's kind of the habit I'll leave you with here, guys, because they're simple, they're small, but there's this a little bit cliche, but very powerful quote from John Wooden, who really needs no introduction. But he likes to say, when you improve a little bit each day, eventually big things occur. So stop looking for the big improvement and seek small improvements one day at a time. That's all meaningful change is. Commit to these small things and the impact can be huge. And I know I am running right up to our time that we had on the calendar here, and I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. So for the sake of time, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. So you're all stuck with my face again for a moment. And see, do we have any questions anyone's been holding on to that we want to get answers to? Nothing burning. I either did a good job. I'm going to
Yeah,
say I
sounds
did a
like
good
you did a great job.
I'll take it. I'll take it. Good. Jason, I know I did not leave you a ton of time at the end here, but were there any announcements or anything you wanted to say as we wrap this up?
I mean, obviously, yeah, you know, we're going to share the recording and slides, as you mentioned, with everyone. But yeah, there are specific ways, you know, anybody interested in following up with Mind Maven should connect with you.
Absolutely. What I'm doing right now, and this will be in the content we share afterwards too, but I just dropped my my email address into Zoom chat there. So if anyone wants to reach out to me for any reason, any questions, please feel free to. I will get you answers to those questions. And Joseph, I know you said that you were potentially interested in exploring this EM partnership role. So I'll get you connected as well with Jelna on our team, who is just a delight. You will love speaking with her. And we can go from there.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, no, really appreciate it. Yeah, it was a great presentation, and appreciate all the, you know, all the questions and everybody that came out today as well. Yeah, so we'll send this out, and feel free to reach out. Anything else we can help with, and definitely check out the calendar we have on the events page. We're doing an info session for our accelerator tomorrow, and then a few more events scheduled over the next few weeks as well. So yeah, really appreciate it. And introduce yourselves in the community if you haven't already. Make these connections here and keep nurturing them, as Connor was explaining.
Very good. Thank you guys.
Thank you so very much, Connor. I greatly appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Joseph. I appreciate all your questions and your interactions and the thumbs up and all of that. Jason, I know how much work goes into putting together events like this. So thanks you, and thank you, Maria, for everything you did to bring everyone together. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
You too. Thank you.